The first thing I noticed about All-Stars Fruit Racing was the very endearing art style that didn't shy away from brightness or color in any way. This is likely the first thing you'll notice too, as it relentlessly slaps you in the face with bold, saturated hot pinks and lime greens from the very moment you fire it up. It makes a very good first impression. I just wish there was more going on under the hood to help kart racing fans like myself to hold on to that initial excitement. Like I said, All-Stars Fruit Racing starts off feeling very promising and fresh. The fruity aesthetic, the cute characters, the striking color palettes all create a very fun and charming world for the game to exist in. The developer certainly went all in with this style, and I personally loved every bit of it, all the way down to the little fun fruit facts during loading screens. The only thing I really take issue with the visual presentation is that font, which I just found hard to read most of the time, but maybe that's just me, I don't know. Once you start playing it though, some not so charming ingredients start to present themselves. Now don't get me wrong, this is a very competent kart racing game that controls well enough and feels decent most of the time. I just never quite got over a few things. For one, the racing itself is more than a little slow for my taste. I know not to expect burnout speeds from a kart racing game, but instead of getting fun racing with moments of mediocrity, the slow base speed of the vehicles just gave me mediocre racing with fleeting moments of fun, like when I would hit a boost or use an item that accelerated your speed for what feels like all of about 1.5 seconds. And this isn't helped much by a handful of other things, like most of the items not being very interesting and often derivative of each other. The juicing mechanic is a neat idea, and it lets you combine different fruits that you pick up to get different power-ups. But ultimately, the whole thing is held back since most of the items are, again, pretty redundant and boring. This could have been the signature mechanic of the game that set it apart from the herd, and I guess on paper it still kind of is, but it just felt like a throwaway component doomed from the start since barely any of the items were worth the trouble of taking my eyes off the road to use the juicing mechanic. That being so, I ended up using whatever item my aimless fruit collecting gave me at the time, and I ended up enjoying more the tracks that seemed to just dump that mechanic altogether in favor of randomly awarding items like a traditional kart racer does. Speaking of the tracks themselves, this is one of ASFR's strong points. The tracks are largely entertaining and well designed. Lots of background animations and some alternate paths do keep the races from sinking too low. For a while anyway. Because for some ungodly reason that I'll never understand, many of the races go on for 4 or 5 laps, much longer than the standard 3, and that wouldn't be a problem if the tracks were designed for that, but it really doesn't seem like they were. So nearly any track that you enjoyed the first time through is certain to lose most, if not all of its charm the 5th time around. And this makes the multi-race cups feel like long slogs when they really didn't need to. On top of that, it's just way too easy most of the time. If you're halfway decent at these types of games, you'll spend the better half of most races way ahead of your incompetent competitors. And that is of course compounded when the race is 5 laps long. The soundtrack is pretty average across the board as well. Nothing really sounds bad, but also there's really nothing here that you're going to want to listen to on your own time either. There is a nice variety of racers, but much like the juicing mechanic, they're largely squandered by the fact that the racers themselves have almost no characteristics that set them apart other than some signature power-ups, which are, as you might guess at this point, pretty lame. There is a somewhat generous kart customization suite with lots of colors and patterns to choose from to customize your vehicles, but this ultimately doesn't add very much to the experience when it's among so many other missed opportunities. I was really hoping, maybe foolishly, that All-Stars Fruit Racing would at least compare to the upper ranks of kart racers. Despite the many chances I gave this game to really get its hooks into me beyond its initial first impression, it just repeatedly fell short. The gains that it makes in terms of presentation and nailing down its own look and style are all but wasted with mediocrity in almost every other area. Instead of joining the upper tier of Mario Kart, the Sonic racing games, or even the slightly lesser but still great games like Little Big Planet Karting or F1 Race Stars, All Stars Fruit Racing lands somewhere well below all of those, yet perhaps maybe slightly above the ultra-shallow mobile racing games like Tabletop or Beach Buggy Racing. If you're looking for something easy and simple to play with your kids, or if you're just a huge kart racing fanatic, there might be a place for All Stars Fruit Racing in your library, but outside of that, I can't really recommend it for most people. It's just okay.